I'm Vicki. I'm from Sheboygan originally. I live in Illinois right now, but my mother and father have lived in Sheboygan since the 70s. It was a couple years ago my dad was diagnosed with dementia. My mom wanted to care for him as long as she could, and she did well for a couple of years. But it was in January of 2023, my sister and I decided we really need to find an option for Mom. Not having navigated this before, we started looking around. We started talking to the Aging and Resource Disability Center. Got some thoughts from them. Harvest Home came on our radar. I travel home from Illinois a couple times a year, as much as I can, to help Mom. And my sister and I decided in January that we'd like to tour Harvest Home, and so I contacted Grace. From the moment we walked in, it just felt homey. Sometimes you get the feeling like nursing homes and everything have a smell, and we walked in and all we could smell was home-cooked meals. And it just felt really comfortable. After talking and touring, and then also seeing a really easy-to-follow fee schedule, my mom decided to put her name down on a waiting list, or my dad's name on a waiting list for an opening. We felt better knowing we would have a place when she was ready. About 6 months later, he started to have some symptoms physically that she could not care for him anymore. And she made the decision to take the spot that opened up at Harvest Home. It was in July. We moved up, came up here and helped to move him in. What was nice was we knew that, one, she was comfortable with Harvest Home. She felt really comfortable with the connections that she had made already with the nurses would come and talk with her and took an assessment of Dad, but then also talked with her and let her know when there were openings. And she kept declining a few, but when an opening was ready and she was ready, she took it. But what was easy was also knowing ahead of time that she was going to be able to afford his care. We had looked at other places and they were kind of hard to follow, the fee schedule and whether she could afford to pay for his care until Medicare would take over, or Medicaid. And the fee schedule here was just really straightforward. It was tiered, and we knew even at the maximum tier, we could figure out how much it was going to be. And so it was a peace of mind to know, okay, that's how much at the max it could be, and he would get cared for and she could afford that. So that was a big comfort. So we moved Dad in July, and Mom had a number of visits here. She would come and take him for a walk, and usually tried to time it out so she could come take him for a walk, and then he'd come home and smell the food cooking, and he would sit down and eat his meal, and then she would leave. But about a month after that, in September, my dad had a stroke. They called her and he went to the hospital, and it was a massive enough stroke that there was not going to be any quality of life. They decided to put him on hospice. My mom and my sister and I discussed with her, and we put him on hospice. And while at the hospital, she was given a decision that for hospice care, she could have him go back to a hospice facility, or some have gone back to their place that they were staying, their senior living, if they would accept them, and then allow hospice to come in there. And she instantly wanted to know if Harvest Home would make that option. Would that be an option for Harvest Home? And once the case manager contacted and talked to Harvest Home and knew that was indeed an option, that was Mom's decision. She wanted him to come back to where he was, and the caring staff that had cared for him. So we had Dad transferred back to the Cameo house here in Howard's Grove. Before we walked into the entrance, Renee, one of the nurses, came out and hugged my mom. And that just meant a lot to her. And we walked into the room, and the activity director had put in soft music, a tray of food and snacks, had smelling scents in the room, and it was just very peaceful. It meant a lot. It meant a lot to our family. Mom was able to have him here. She could go home and rest and then come back and check on him. And the hospice came in and cared for him and did the additional support. But the nurses here and the CNAs here did provide the support that they could do. A couple days later, he decided it was time.
But Mom has such a sense of peace that he was here during that time. She said it felt like a home to him, and it felt like a home to her. And she could trust the care he was getting. She felt they cared for him as much as she did. And one of the things that brought a smile to our faces, my dad liked making people laugh. And even if he would tell a story 15 times, he didn't remember you knew it, but he would tell it, and he liked to hear people laugh. And one of the CNAs, when we came in, started telling stories about Dad and saying how she enjoyed him so much because he would make fun of the exercise shows on TV, or he would make some sort of joke and be kind of ornery about it, but she would laugh and he would laugh with her. It just reminded me that they were helping bring him joy in the last time we had with him. So it really, really meant a lot. It's a God thing that we found Harvest Home and we got to have him here. We feared over the last couple of years how Dad's life would go. I was glad we found this place because we didn't have to worry anymore. I prayed for years, and this was the answer to prayer.
For those who are looking for an assisted living or a memory care home for your loved one, I would just urge you to consider Harvest Home because it's a small home atmosphere. It's not like a sterile healthcare institution. Home-cooked meals that the smells radiate throughout the house that just feels like home. Caring staff who just really, I feel like, care for your family members like you would care for your family members.